Go.
All right, what's up, UCF Navigators? My name is Chris Holguin, and I'm the college pastor at University Carolina. And years ago, I had the opportunity to lead Bible study when I was on NAV's student leadership as well. And Angel pulled me aside and just asked me if I could share a couple of things about what I feel like the Lord has taught me over the years since graduating college and having the opportunity to lead vocationally in ministry. And I feel like the one thing that really came to my mind and stood out to me is that there's really no such thing as going on autopilot. We never graduate from being a follower of the Lord first. We are a follower of Jesus before we are a leader of men. And we never graduate from inquiring of Him prayerfully. So we have to fight this temptation that we get to a certain point in our discipleship where we know enough. We can kind of plug and play when it comes to ministry, our own walks of attending to our own hearts. We never graduate from being a disciple, which just at the simplest term is to be a learner and a follower of the Lord. So just know that in the seasons where I've just tried to coast on what I know and what I've experienced before, I've felt the least amount of kingdom in me and have seen the least amount of kingdom around me. But the times where God has just reoriented my heart to be a follower of Him first and to inquire of Him is when I've seen kingdom in me and around me the most. So just know that there's no such thing as autopilot, but the greatest joy is to take up that light yoke and easy burden of continuing to abide with the Lord. So you never graduate and don't ever go on auto tune. And just to finish up, I think of this quote that I heard from a pastor where he said that we dream of a God that brings heaven to earth, but God dreams of praying people to share heaven with. And now that I know that the Lord desires intimacy, that is always following in Him and always listening to His voice, I don't ever want to live a life on autopilot. So that's just my encouragement to you guys. Yeah.
Hey friends, my name is Olivier Barolet, and I am a UCF alum. I was a part of the Navigators during my 4 years in college, and I graduated from UCF in 2020. Now I'm at the University of Florida in medical school. I'm in my second year. And I'm going to just be talking to you guys a little bit about what it looks like, I guess, to me to be a biblical leader. And I've been a leader in a lot of different sects, I would say, of my life. But one of the biggest examples that I've had from leadership biblically comes from Numbers 16, particularly verses, particularly verses 41 through 50. And so I guess really give a really brief paraphrase. The Israelites were under the Lord's judgment, and as a result, that a lot of them were killed. And that's kind of the story where I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but the ground kind of swallows them up. But essentially, the unholy men and women of that time were under the Lord's judgment. And after that had happened, the people of Israel grumbled against Moses, who has been the leader of the Israelites and has been a very faithful leader to them. The people grumbled against him and blamed him for the reason that the Lord's judgment has came upon them, and which it wasn't obviously Moses' fault. It was the people's fault for being wicked, but they blamed Moses for that. And because of that, the Lord's wrath again was on those people for blaming Moses, I guess you could say. And so now again, a plague fell on the Israelite people. And Moses' response is actually what really shook me aback about what it means to be a leader, because Moses then tells the priest at the time, Aaron, to go make atonement for the people. And so they're in the middle of the plague, and they're in the middle of begging God and praying for God to forgive the people that sin against them, and so that the Lord would relieve the plague, and so that the people wouldn't perish. And that just really took me aback, because I think about so often in my life and in my life as a leader, there's been many times where people I've been leading or been trying to lead have been challenging to me and have challenged me as well. And I think I can get caught up in sinfully of being a leader, thinking it's about power or about authority. But ultimately, what I took away from Moses, who in my opinion is one of the best examples of a biblical leader in the scriptures, is that leadership really starts with serving the people that are under you, essentially, and that you're the first one to give up of your life for those around you. And I would say, honestly, essentially in all sects of life, regardless of what you do, whether it's ministry, not ministry, secular work and such, that you can be a biblical leader if you're loving as Christ did, and that you're ready to give up of yourself, and regardless of how the people treated you. Because I think the world will probably say, in regards to this, is that the people grumbled against Moses, so Moses would be right and justified in just watching his people suffer. But instead, Moses saw his people suffer. Even though they suffered because they blamed him and accused him wrongly, he still was the first one to make atonement for him, and he still was the first one to seek their forgiveness. And that has affected me and how I view myself as a leader today. Like currently, I'm the class president of my class at medical school. And I do find myself in a lot of situations where I'm being blamed for things that are not my fault, or I do find myself being in situations where I do kind of feel like Moses. But in those moments, I commonly think about this, and I commonly think that, like, regardless of how those around me treat me, that I'm going to live as Christ wants me to live, and that is sacrificially giving up of myself towards others. And so I hope that's an encouragement to you guys as you continue to grow in your faith and as you continue to grow to be leaders in respective areas and such. And yeah, and I definitely love this area of biblical leadership. A short 3-4 minute video is probably not long enough to talk about it, especially because leadership is something that I'm very passionate about. But I hope you can take away something for this. And I guess if you have any more questions about anything, you can ask Angel for my phone number. Angel's one of my good friends, and she'll give it to you. So thank you guys.
Hello, my name is Cassie Thornburg, and I serve here at the U.S. headquarters for the Navigators in Colorado Springs, serving on the iEdge leadership team. I do training and development, recruiting, shepherding, and care and mobilizing for teams of iEdgers going overseas and serving for 2 to 3 years in countries all over the world. I also did iEdge and served for 2 years in Auckland, New Zealand, and have been in this role then since returning at the headquarters for the last 2.5 years. As I've thought about what the Lord has been teaching me in my own leadership and what it means to be a gospel-centered leader, I think I've been thinking about conflict and forgiveness and reconciliation, because that is something I see most in my current role. The number one reason that missionaries leave the field or teams fall apart is actually conflict. And it's not conflict with locals that they're trying to serve overseas, but it's conflict within their own teams and other Christians and missionaries that they were sent out with or trying to work with. And I think that this really matters because I think that when Jesus left the earth, he left behind a group of people and communities that when the world looked in on those communities and those relationships, that they might see something of the kingdom of God there. And I think that's why he says in John 13, by this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And I think that that is why it's important as gospel-centered leaders to engage in conflict and to extend forgiveness and move towards reconciliation in our relationships, because I think that's at the very center of the gospel, is a God who is able to absorb offense and extend forgiveness and still move towards us to reconcile a broken relationship. And so who are we not to do that with one another? I've just seen that, and I think it can be one of the biggest hindrances in people experiencing the love of Christ and really understanding the gospel, because they need to not only just hear about those things, but to see a community that embodies loving one another in that way. So that is what I would say.
Hey guys, my name is Megan Smith, and you don't really know me, but my husband Mark and I were at UCF before Dan for 7 years. So we love UCF, we love your staff team, and we have been praying for you and generations after you since we came in 2014. So it's just exciting to hear all that's going on there. So anyway, I hear you are learning about leadership in different contexts. So I am a mom, and I have 3 kids who are now 10, 8, and 5. And leadership, honestly, there's a lot of similarities with leading kids as there are in leading anyone else. So I think some of the things that I thought of were to learn your kids. They're just little people with their very own hearts and their own minds, their own personalities that we have to, it's like a little mystery to solve, is who is this kid that I've been given. So to learn what makes them excited and what is hard for them, to gain their trust, to listen to them, to know the things that feel really big and important to them right now, even though they're not. If you listen to the little things now, when there are bigger things, they'll know they can trust you to listen to those also. I think also modeling, asking forgiveness, saying I'm sorry, letting them see that you're growing, that you're trusting God for hard things. And sometimes it's hard to trust God, and it's okay to tell them that too. If they go on thinking that it's easy, they'll be disappointed. And then also just teaching. There's a lot of teaching. We like to really try to be proactive with our kids and be able to give them a foundation of biblical truths that they will hopefully be able to have some of that truth before they're just absorbing it from everywhere else in the world. So that can look very different in lots of different contexts. But I want to be a pretty strong voice in my kids' lives as they're growing and developing their character and showing them how to believe God, and that it's not always easy, and but it's good.
One of my favorite characteristics of a godly leader is being a good receiver. That might sound weird when it comes to leaders who are always giving, and leaders should be quick to sacrifice and quick to think about what they could bring with their gifts to the people that they're leading and all that. But really, a characteristic that godly leaders have shown me is that they're also good receivers. It's clear from Scripture, Hebrews 12:28 says, "Therefore let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken." So part of receiving is just acknowledging that we're receiving the kingdom, and if we're being extended the kingdom from God, then we should receive it well. And then that leads to, I just am so impressed when godly leaders just receive compliments well, when others go out of the way to just say kind things like, here, what you did or what you said impacted me this way. They receive it. They don't play this fake humble game of like, oh, it's not me. And they just simply say thanks. And I just think that's been something that's really stood out to me in my days, is it just fosters this kind of mutual beneficial interaction between leaders and people that they're leading. So that's been an important characteristic for me.